My startup's struggling. I'm working like a dog. I love what I'm doing. I love the people I work with. I just can't quite figure out how to make it all click.
How did you convince someone that they should give you $10 million for a failing company?
If you're not willing to fail, and you start lying and committing fraud and losing sight of your own ethical anchors, I would not want to be one of those people.
We're going to figure it out. And, it happens every time.
I want to finish what I started. And I don't know how long I have to do it. This is not a good moment that we're living in.
It must have been some secret sauce, so you have to share it with us.
It is.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Atypical Journey, the podcast where we explore inspiring stories of people who have taken unexpected turns, rebuilt themselves and created impact along the way. Today, I am joined by Brian O'Kelly. Brian is a husband, a father, a tech founder. He's a current CEO and co-founder of Scope 3, where he's leading important work around reducing the carbon footprint of digital advertising. Before that, Brian has built, scaled, and exited multiple companies, including AppNexus in $1 billion deal. But today, we are moving past the headlines. We are meeting the man behind the innovations, behind the success. We are meeting the dreamer, the risk takers. We will also be talking about the ups and downs and all the turning points of his life, the lesson he learned along the way. So welcome to Atypical Journey, Brian. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start with this question. If we remove all your credentials, all the things you accomplished, and the industry recognition and everything, who are you? Who is Brian, if you were to describe yourself?
I think at heart, I'm a very curious builder. And I like to just dig in and make things with other people and see if we can solve problems. And, I think if you took everything away, I could still, ask good questions and lead teams and, go run at almost anything you could point me at.
What do you like to do for fun?
I build companies. I build products, I kind of love what I do. It is my vocation and my avocation all at the same time.
And your passion too. It's not work. It's literally also leisure for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't get paid enough for it to be work. It really is where I find meaning and purpose, is thinking about things that you could change in the world and trying to figure out ways to do them. It's the most complicated and most challenging adventure you could go on, in my mind.
It's not a surprise. You are widely recognized as one of the people who helped shape programmatic advertising and modern ad tech. But before we get into all of this, I want you to take me back to your childhood. What kind of kid were you when you were younger?
Well, I remember sitting in my room with a pile of baseball cards. I get a $1 allowance. My dad would take me to Toys R Us, and you could see in the cellophane packs, you could see the top card and the bottom card. And if you pulled gently, you could maybe see the little outline of a couple other cards. And I would put all the cards on the floor of the Toys R Us. And my dad would just sit there. And I would go through everyone trying to find the players I didn't have. And I'd come home with my stack of cards. And I would, in these like plastic sheets, be putting all the cards. And I'd start organizing them by team. To see which, then they had numbers, so 1 to 792 or whatever it was. And then I was like, no, I should order it by the stats. And I got Bill James' Baseball Encyclopedia, and he had all these interesting like stats. This is like cyber, I forget what he called it, cyber something. But this whole idea of, maybe I should rank them by how good they are. So I should have Dwight Gooden in the beginning, and then Wade Boggs, and then, Roger Clemens, and then just go down through the whole thing. And I would never finish. I never finished it. I would always think of a new, better way to do it. And, then I'd go to my friend Cabe Nixick's house and he'd be like, I'll trade you this Tim Raines card, because that was his favorite player, for like 3 random people you've never heard of. And he'd try to convince me that this was a good trade. And I'm a sucker. I'd always do it. And I'd come home, my dad would be like, how could you do that? Tim Raines is really good. I don't know. I think I might be more or less the same kind of person now, like start a lot of projects, always trying to figure out how things work. Yeah. And, sometimes I have a hard time finishing.
What kind of familiar background did you come from? What were your parents doing as a job? Did they have a vision of what success looked like or what path they wanted you to go to?
My dad is a law professor still. It was cool because it meant he got discounts on computers. So we had a Mac in 1987 with a tiny little 9-inch black and white screen, no hard drive, just had their floppy disks. And he had and has incredibly high expectations for me. I think he always, just wanted me to be incredibly successful and pushed me really hard. Like he was the kind of guy where I don't think I beat him in tennis until he was about 40, maybe 50. I mean, he would never let me win. And yet he coached my basketball team, he spent countless hours, playing any kind of game with me or standing out in the front yard with my friend Kevin Carolyn and I trying to beat him in football 2-on-1. I don't know how we ever lost, but we did. And my mom was a volunteer. She worked at United Way and she spent a lot of time in school. She was a teacher before. And she was a super active part of the community. She was in the junior league. So I was fortunate. I had, a mom who was really active and engaged. I have a little sister who's not that little anymore, who's 3 or 4 years younger than me. And she was the worst. She was incredibly annoying. And ended up actually, after college, coming to work at AppNexus. And she designed our logo, which I probably am wearing somewhere in my body right here, and became an incredibly successful product manager and executive, went on to Amazon and is now an entrepreneur herself. So I don't know, something in the water in our family.
Did you have any experiences that, looking back, you think shaped kind of who you became later?
When I was in high school, I sort of volunteered to help my high school write a proposal to get Macs instead of the Apple IIs we had. And I got to work with a lot of the teachers on, what kind of computers do we need and why do we need them and how could they work? I kind of got to run the computer lab. And I started to learn about this thing called NCSA Mosaic, which was a web browser. And it was very clunky. And I was very curious. And I started reading the manual, basically like the documentation. It's all before the internet, as we know. You couldn't browse the web. You had to find some gopher site and get there. And I was obsessed with this idea that I could then build what we would now call a website. And so in 1994, I made a website for my high school, which was an international baccalaureate high school. And I put, all of us had to write independent research papers. And I wanted to publish these research papers so people all around the world, because we're an international high school, could read them. And so I put up a web server, not really knowing what I was doing. And the documentation for this was written by a guy named Mark Andreessen. And so if you look at my childhood heroes, it was Steve Jobs, because I had a Mac. And I had stacks of Mac magazines. And it was Mark Andreessen. And that really started me into computer science, because that whole summer I was trying to figure out how to make, my little websites do more things, start a web development company with my friend Pat McCarthy. And long story short, the very first investor in AppNexus was Mark Andreessen.
Really?
I got to meet my hero. He became a mentor. And, it was incredible to, I don't know, I felt like just to be part of a world where someone like me from Eugene, Oregon, middle-class kid could be sitting in the Opsware office and talking to Mark and Ben.
It's clear that finding patterns, solving problems, that's something that you've always been interested in. But what about computers specifically were attractive to you? You could be curious about anything, so being curious, yes, but what specifically about tech? Most kids will maybe go through a phase where they want to go out and hang out with their friends and doing all of those crazy things. That's what's attractive. So were you trying to run away from people and then bury yourself into something that's beyond yourself? What was attracting you to computers?
I don't really know exactly what. I mean, it was just they were just so powerful. The very first Mac was an incredible experience. You turn it on and you put the disk in and would give you a tutorial to teach you how to use a mouse. Because back then, no one knew what that was. It was brand new. And like the way it was just like an immersive experience that like, I just thought it was the most amazing thing. Like this idea of like dragging. Like it taught you how to drag from here to there because no one had ever seen it before. Yeah. But the way the care they had put into this thing. But it wasn't antisocial for me, at least. I remember carrying my Mac over to my friend's house to play games, sit at my computer for hours playing games with each other. And like it was, and I wouldn't consider us like super nerdy kids. I think it was just like, we'd go out and play football or kick a soccer ball or, do something and run down to the park and play tennis and then come back and play computer games. And I don't know, it just felt like sort of just different ways of play.
So eventually you go into computer science. What was your objective? What did you want to do in life? Were you trying to get a job at Apple? Did you always know that you would eventually become a founder? What if you had imagined what success looked like back in high school or college? What was that for you?
Well, the senior year of high school, a friend of mine and I started a little company doing websites, as I said. And so I was actually writing code, not knowing what I was doing, before college. I did not go to college to be a computer scientist. I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer or who knows. But I specifically didn't want to go to an engineering school. I wanted to go to a place where I could do both. I didn't want to get like regimented into that. And the reality is that at Princeton, I was incredibly curious about different things. Like I took a Slavic literature class that was unbelievable. I took 2 semesters of that. And I was the only engineer in that class. And I would consistently skip levels. Like they'd be like, you have to take the 100 level, then the 200 level. I was like, I have no time for this. I've read Dostoevsky. I'm going to take the 300 level. And so it's all these majors, where it's like they're experts. And these are small group precepts. Like people are debating. They're like, wow, you're actually pretty smart. And I'm like, yeah, just because I'm an engineer doesn't mean I can't engage in literature. But I took, classes on Kant and on, short stories and on politics. And I would just, whatever sort of, I thought was interesting, I would try to go do. And I feel like that meant that, so much of my job today is like telling stories and making connections and analogies. And strategy isn't about, logic. Yeah. It's about how can you get a bunch of people how can you deeply understand what motivates people, motivates yourself. Like self-awareness is the mission of a founder. Yeah. And so I think at that time, if you'd looked at me in college, you would have been like, okay, this guy, takes all these weird classes, he sleeps under a desk in the computer science building trying to build something. He plays club basketball,
He's all over the place.
What is this person doing? But I was always doing something, And I think today you look at my life and be like, wow, like he is literally always running around, taking care of his kids, trying to pay the bills and run a company. And my wife has a nonprofit. She has a podcast. And I'm like, I feel like I just have every single cell of my body engaged in something at all times. So I think it was less about like being a computer scientist to get a job. It was more like it was clear to me that I was being pulled toward, can you build things? Like I'm I write code every day or let Claude do it for me these days. But it called me in a way, but I was equally called to, reading Pushkin or Tolstoy or, trying to understand the connections between, I don't know, like, I don't think I ever was like, I'm going to be a founder, but no one who knew me would be surprised that this is what I am doing.
Yeah. So eventually you did that pretty quick, right after college. Can you take us through that journey of the first company you started with your friends?
Well, yeah, that was a big disaster. It's a funny story because it started when my best friend, Hagos, came to me and said, my buddy and I are going to start a web company and we need help. And they were going to make websites for celebrities. That was their big plan. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm not sure it's a business, but I can try to help. And it kind of evolved into being a Ticketmaster competitor. We were going to hire a bunch of amazing writers and build content about all the venues in LA and use that to get people to our website to go buy tickets for like shows and concerts and stuff. And so the day after college, we raised like $500,000, which back then was a ton of money. And
how did you do that?
Oh,
bunch of kids out of college.
Princeton has lots of rich people.
And how did you convince people though to believe in that? Because it was a pretty new concept at the time.
Well, .com was crazy then. Like it's like AI now. It's like a couple of college kids being like, we have a big AI idea.
Yeah.
They could raise some money.
That's true.
It's just like that.
That's true.
And we were computer scientists and, very, I think, energetic and thoughtful about what we were doing. And so the day after graduation, we flew out to California and I was the CEO of a startup in LA. And we were building websites for clubs and I had never been to a club.
Had never been to a club?
No, why would I go to a club?
Why leave my computers and go to a club?
Exactly. And so it was funny because my co-founders, this guy Hirsch, who was the guy from LA who knew everybody, and Hagos, like they would go out to the clubs to do business development, stay out very late with glow sticks and do more business development. And I would stay up until 4 a.m. with the programmers in the office. And at the time that wasn't crazy because it was a super boom and it was like everyone was doing all these things. Yeah. But it quickly became apparent that not only did we not totally know what we were doing, we weren't getting along, that this was really two different mindsets about the culture. Hirsch wanted to go party and have fun. And his belief was that networking and making connections and like playing the LA scene was the way to succeed. Yeah. And I was convinced that building tech and having an e-commerce platform that could sell tickets to anyone on the internet was the way to succeed. And the answer might have been both.
I was going to say it's complementary. So.
Could be, but we didn't figure that out. We did not figure out a way to do that together. And it became a fight of like what kind of company we were and we didn't have a mature, thoughtful conversation about how to blend the best of Hirsch and the best of Brian. Hagos kind of got stuck in the middle. And, we were all just kids, right? 21, 22. And the company fell apart because, we did not acquire tickets and, the tech didn't quite work and we ran out of money and we didn't have, we just failed. And so 2 months after college, I was sleeping on my dad's couch in Atlanta, Georgia, which was definitely not the plan and kind of embarrassing and weird to see all of these, Princeton people I knew at, McKinsey or Accenture or, Goldman Sachs or doing all these things. And here I was unemployed.
Every time we hear these stories, of course, people go through difficulties, right? And it becomes like an anecdote, like very quickly, I went through this. But it couldn't have been that easy. If you go back to that point, after building something, maybe having hope that it's going to take off and it doesn't work, and then you are back to square one, uncertainty. So if I take you back to your dad's basement, right, at night, you're sitting there by yourself with your computer, what are you thinking?
Well, one thing I was thinking was, I got to get back in the game because the .com boom was happening. This was 1999. I mean, I could just feel the energy and I wanted back in. Like this was my time, computer scientist, like web founder, like I had to do something. And I didn't know if I could start something myself. And I was also devastated because, my best friend had just fired me basically from this startup. And I hadn't talked to him for 5 years, basically.
Oh, wow.
And that was pretty devastating for me. My parents had divorced, and it was a really challenging time.
What did I do to your confidence, though, to have started something and then have it fail so young? Were you convinced at the time that you were still going to emerge from that and build something bigger? Are you the type of people who are like, I never quit, I never lose faith, and I know I'm going to do it? Or were you genuinely scared or at least doubtful of what's next?
I think the part of that story is interesting is, we launched our, LAtonight.com, our ticketing thing, and ran out of money. And I flew to meet one of our investors in Bermuda. And I flew to New York after that. So I got her to give us $200,000. I came to New York. This is before, cell phones. So like I used a map to find my way to this office. And there was a company here called clubplanet.com. And I convinced them to buy the business. So instead of failing, they offered us $10 million.
Wow.
Okay? 2 months after college. I owned half the company, just about.
How did you convince someone that they should give you $10 million for a failing company?
Well, because it was we had all these domain names. The site was amazing. Like the tech was unique. Like, we had all these things going for us.
But do you know how many people have amazing ideas but have a hard time conveying it or convincing anyone or even having someone believe in what they have? So it must have been some secret sauce. So you have to share it with us.
You have to remember that 99 was a crazy time. Like now, if I said I have 7 Princeton computer science, I hired a quarter of the Princeton computer science graduating class. I have built a ticketing platform that is better than anything else. It was at that time better than Ticketmaster's, right? I obviously was a total internet native at that point.
But you see, that's the thing. You were convinced that you had something better than Ticketmaster. So it's also in the attitude, I think.
Yeah. And we had, hired writers from Variety and from Rolling Stone to come. I mean, if you went to the website at that time, it was like special. We were the only dark mode website on the whole internet that wasn't porn. But like, it just felt like it was something special.
Yeah.
And so this Club Planet team. So imagine me flying back to LA to my 2 co-founders being like, guys, I've got good news. We were broke when I left. I'm back 5 days later. I have enough money for a few more months and we're about to be millionaires. And they told me no, and they fired me. They said, you don't see the vision. If pets.com is worth hundreds of millions, how can we sell for just 10? So I'm on my dad's couch having just almost sold my company for $5 million to me. Yeah. Like the difference between that moment and of like, so did I have confidence? I mean, in a sense, okay, we failed, but like, I didn't fail. I did my thing. I built an incredible platform. I hired incredible people. We did all the things. But what failed was my rapport with my founders. What failed was the people part. And actually, we went to couples therapy before they fired me. Hirsch, August, and I went to a therapist, and we had a couples therapy session with the 3 of us. And they yelled at me and said that I had no empathy, that I was a pain in the ass, that I didn't care about them. And there was a whole thing. And I was like, you guys are lazy slackers who just go out and party at clubs. So shut up, come work. And the thing is, I listened to what they said, and I bought a book by Daniel Goleman called Emotional Intelligence at Work, I think. And it had a quiz you take at the end where you can grade yourself, ask you all these questions. And my emotional intelligence, my EQ was like, 47, we're like 100 as normal humans, But it was like, okay, like I don't invest in this. I don't spend time on these things. I'm not a small talk kind of person. Like I'm not good at small talk.
Yeah, I get it.
I would literally start practicing. I would be in a cab. I'd chat up the driver. I'm like, so how is the weather, human?
How did that go?
You'd be like, But the thing is, like, at some level, you just have to recognize that some of this stuff is like innate, like caring about it. Once you start to care about it, you'll do it. Yeah. But also, it's just something you can practice. Like, if you want to practice being a public speaker, like I hired a media coach at AppNexus, because if you look at me speak publicly in 2007 and look at me now, I'm a much more confident speaker. But actually, it's the confidence that you experience a lot. Like 50% of speaking is like body language.
Yeah.
A quarter is just tone of voice. And only 25% is what you say. Once you realize that, if you are confident and you know how to speak, how to pace your speaking and how to do these things, like it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. And I think that's part of the thing is that a lot of people don't recognize that they're giving away their lack of confidence by how they speak, how they engage. To your question though, like I did not know on that couch at my dad's that I would be here, a struggling entrepreneur, what is it now, 27 years later, because I still feel exactly the same. Like my startup's struggling. I'm working like a dog. I love what I'm doing. I love the people I work with. I just can't quite figure out how to make it all click. But the thing is, like, I think I will. I'm pretty confident I will. I don't know how. I have that same sense of there is an answer. I can find it. I just have to not, lose the energy and focus on like getting there. I have this friend who he wanted to invest in Scope 3 and he invested some money. And, I like him a lot. He's a smart guy. But he thinks that investing the money means he gets to ask me for investor updates. And it means that, he's sort of like, well, why won't you give me an investor update? And I'm like, well, I have like 50 investors. I can't give everybody an update. Yeah. And you don't have the right to, I'm in the middle of a crisis. Like, you're not getting that I'm incredibly busy and exhausted and you're not giving me space. If you just said, hey, how's it going in a kind way, I would say it's going really shitty. But like the dynamic of suddenly being an investor changed the relationship. Mm-hmm. It's messed up. People are like, someone said to me like, people are 80% of your problems at work and people are 80% of your opportunities at work. Mm. And I've learned a lot from the process. But one thing I have learned is rupture and repair. Rupture is inevitable. There's going to be tough moments, but the repair is what makes relationships work. And 5 years later, while I did not talk to Hagos for 5 years, 5 years later, he gone to business school. He showed up in New York, and we had a very awkward and uncomfortable reconnection. And then another, and then another. And suddenly we were repaired, hanging out. And you know what? This weekend, I was hanging out with Hagos. I see his family, his parents, his kids. Like, he remains my best friend. Even though for 5 years we didn't talk, we came back together. And, I invested in his company. He invested in my company. He came and worked at AppNexus, and it was amazing to work together for a while. And it just turns out that like life is long and, it's okay. We worked through it. Even Hirsch, even though we didn't get along at all, we reconnected. And he and his family came out to Italy and stayed in our house one summer a couple years ago. And, it's like...
Sometimes it's not the good timing too.
Exactly. And my point is that, even this investor guy I'm talking about, like, I bet we're friends in 5 years again. I think it's just like these moments where things are tough and hard and people go through things like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. We'll work through this.
After that firing and living with your dad, you had another episode where you went on to work, this time for somebody else. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I got a job. Very proud of myself for that. One of my advisors, I'd reached out to a bunch of people to help me with my startup, and one of them, mainly Princeton people, and one of them was a guy named Alan Crowther. He was running a consulting company, helping big and small companies like implement internet solutions, especially around real-time personalization. And he and his partner said, well, come work for us. We'll teach you everything we know after a decade doing consulting. And you can come, work on these like projects. And so I got to say, like, those 18 months I worked with them, I learned more than in any time in my career. Like, they were truly elite consultants. And being a consultant is really powerful because you learn things like how to deliver what you promise, how to run a project, how to really engage a customer who's paying you to get things done. They were just an incredible group of mentors for me at that point in my life. So I got thrown into these really complex, big, crazy situations where at like 22 years old, it's insane that I was in these rooms. Pitching to like the CEO of a public company about like how they should personalize their website. It was incredibly cool. So that was a great experience.
From your story, like I see a lot of like the constant theme is like, it's okay, we're going to figure it out. And, it happens every time. What's the driving factor to keep you, standing when these things happen to you?
I don't know. I mean, if you look at the lowest moments, like the parts where it's just been so awful, I've been on my kitchen floor crying over, AppNexus had to lay off a bunch of people because I, basically screwed up. And just the sense of having to fire 100-something people because I hadn't done my job well, it is devastating. I take accountability for myself in that way. But one of the things that meant a lot to me in that process was just having been there, I've been fired, and I know how hard it is to go through those times. And it's part of why it hurts so much, but it's also, just being resilient and being also just really strategic about what it means to be between things. Because it's easy to get ego for all of us. It's easy to get expectations about what your title should be or how you should be treated. I love that you asked me, what would you do with no titles or achievements or recognitions? Because actually that is my personal gauge, is if I had no money and no status and no prestige and no nothing, who am I? Yeah. And so much is what we do is we cling to our, our car and our, accomplishments and all these different things. And I'm like, great, but we could have nothing again. Now, if the world falls apart and you want someone to actually physically protect your body or fix a physical object, like I can't fix a clogged drain. Like I can do nothing in the real world. I'm completely useless. But if you need anything else than that, like if we still have computers after the apocalypse, we'll be good. I gotcha.
At some point at White Media, you climbed the ladder so fast and you became the CTO. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, it's a 4-person company, so there's not much of a ladder. It's more like a step stool. But this company was a little tiny ad network, and I got hired as first I was basically just brought in to help them build their first tech platform. I was just like a developer or something.
So you were one of the founding engineers?
I was like the first or second engineer they hired.
Okay.
Yeah. But I didn't have any equity. I didn't have a title really. I just was like the guy building it. Mm-hmm. And after about 2 months, my boss, a guy named Matt Phillips, who was the CTO, looked at me and he's like, actually, you should have my job. He's like, you know what you're doing. And he's like, I'm a product manager. I'm not actually the tech guy. He's like, you should just have my title. That doesn't really happen very often in my experience. And then I just did all kinds of amazing things, and they gave me equity. I didn't ask for it. They were just like, you should have equity in this company. And so they gave me, 9 or 10% of the company, which we eventually sold for $850 million. So, I mean, kind of amazing. Yeah. And I've taken that with me. Then they fired me and took most of it away. So it was a great story, except for the part where they fired me. Exactly. And I didn't get to keep it. But
why did they fire you?
Oh, man. That's a very complicated story. But they fired me because we didn't know what we were doing. It was a bunch of kids who were very, very successful. And at some point, the CEO, Mike, and I lost touch with each other. I was running this new programmatic business I invented, and he was kind of running the ad network, and he was talking to the press, and he was doing things with it. We just started drifting apart, and the chief operating officer of the company got between us and started to pull us apart further and further, so that she could get power.
Office politics.
And basically convinced him and the board that I was a problem and got me fired. And it was, in hindsight, the best thing that could have possibly happened. But at the time, it was the worst possible thing. Partially because she was my wife.
Oh, no.
Long.
Plot twist.
Not for long.
Okay.
That did not last long.
What is going on?
She had an affair
Oh my
with
God.
my thesis advisor from Princeton, got him installed as the CTO instead of me, and convinced them to give him all my equity.
No way.
Yeah. So he betrayed me. She betrayed me. The company and board betrayed me, and basically took the company and the technology I invented, sold it to Yahoo, who was my client and my friends.
Oh my God.
And the only positive part of the story is that I didn't have to go work at Yahoo, which, if you look at Yahoo at that moment, was the biggest internet company in the world. It was just a massive avalanche destruction of value at that company for the next 10 years. Yeah. So everyone who got stuck at Yahoo was in this sort of crazy political thing. I got angry. I went to therapy. I started AppNexus. I hired my team back. I met Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, raised money, and 4 years later, took every single customer away from all of those assholes.
Revenge.
And put them out of business. Put them out of business. And you should never, ever make me that mad, because I tell you what, the pain was turned into a creative energy that was unparalleled.
Oh my God. I'm still in shock with this story.
Oh, it's better. Are you want the best part?
Yes.
She's going to jail. If you could ever design your story of what you want to happen to the ex-wife that betrays you, literally, she started a company, defrauded her investors of $300 million, and is going to jail because with the professor that she had the affair with. But he is blaming her, and so far is avoiding jail, which I think is actually kind of hilarious, that he's throwing her under the bus like he threw me. It's betrayers betraying each other.
It doesn't surprise anyone.
But it's hilarious. And I'm well, these are horrible humans. And, they both, for a while, were these big shooting stars and bragging about themselves. And it turns out that you can't betray people and steal and be absolutely awful. Thank goodness we still live in a society. They'll probably pay off Donald Trump and get out of jail. But whatever. The point is just there's a little bit of icing on the cake at the end of this all.
Yeah.
In that, at least, while I've failed a lot of times, I was willing to fail. If you're not willing to fail, and you start lying and committing fraud and losing sight of your own ethical anchors, I would not want to be one of those people who made those decisions and betrayed me, not because of the betrayal, because they have to live with it. And they have to live with the fact that I have thrived, I have succeeded. Yeah. And now my company's struggling. We had to lay people off, and it's been awful, and it sucks. And I hate having to say that out loud, because I hate every aspect of it. And I still get to be me every day. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that I can fail and make mistakes and be, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur if you're not willing to fail. I guess that's the point. You shouldn't fall in love if you're not willing to be hurt. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Now, having all these lessons, it's easy, clearly, to see that it was a blessing for you, both professionally and also who wants to be with someone like that. But again, you didn't know that at the time. So the pain that you went through, how lower can it get to be betrayed professionally, financially, and also emotionally? So what carried you through that time?
I think, anger is one answer.
That's good, because sometimes we don't allow ourselves to feel that anger, but we are humans and it's normal, and we don't have to repress it.
Yeah. Well, someone said I had a very balanced personality, which I thought was nice. And then they said, you have chips on both shoulders. And I was maybe that wasn't a compliment. But I've always just had this incredibly strong sense of needing to create things and needing to build and needing to find purpose and meaning. And it's really hard. I can't stop that sense. I'm going to go do something. And, you can call that being a force of nature. You can just call it being like, deeply troubled because I can't seem to sit and watch a TV show for more than like 12 minutes without getting incredibly bored. But like, it's just like, I have to go do something.
So you had that rage, right? But also, what did you understand about programmatic that at the time the big players didn't understand that made your next venture so successful?
Well, for one thing, I invented it. So I had seen how it worked. I had gone through 2 or 3 failed attempts before the one that worked. And so I think people who weren't in the creative process of that didn't really know how it really worked. And so if you look at because at the moment I started AppNexus, you had Microsoft, Yahoo, and DoubleClick at that time, and AOL, I guess, all trying to build some kind of real-time bidding system. It's very difficult technically, and it helps to be a computer scientist in that sense. But they also didn't get the business model. They didn't get, like they hadn't been through all of the mistakes on the way. And so when I came out with some of the innovations around AppNexus, Google had 1,000 people, I had 19, but we knew what to do. And we knew how to build it. And so we beat them to market.
And maybe you were motivated by actually wanting to do something and not necessarily the money, just for the sake of money. Because that's the difference, Sometimes you will create something or you will see someone who comes up with a nice solution and then everyone sees that it's lucrative and they want to do the same thing. But it's not like you don't have the same compulsion as a person who really sat there and tried to like actually solve a problem,
Yeah. Well, I think money is just a means, right? Money is what you have to have money to make your ideas work. And so a lot of founders do get stuck on, I can't raise money. And I respect the fact that I have the advantage of being a tall, white, Princeton-educated, multi-successful man. Did I say man?
Makes it easy.
It makes it easier.
Yeah.
I look, well, not dressed like this, but if I, make a slight effort, I can look like what you think a CEO might look like.
Yeah.
But this is more like what you think a founder, a technical founder might look like. And so, it's also authentic. Like I am a tech founder. I am a computer scientist. I do write code every single day. I do live and breathe being an entrepreneur and a founder and a team leader and, a friend and colleague and all these things. This is me. So, but money is not my goal. Money is actually just what I need to go do it. And if we sell this company for money, it's because my investors expect returns, and that's why they invested. I'm meeting their needs, but that's not my need. My need is the biggest challenge I can possibly succeed at and maybe fail at.
Yeah.
If there's not the chance of failure, I'm not interested. If a company gets so big and inevitable that it's like, I will leave. I do not want to be in an easy job.
I mean, you live what you say, because I was just reading the other day that after you sold AppNexus, your share, your part of that sale, you gave it up, I mean, not all of it, to charity. Why?
Well, I mean, for one thing, I guess I don't think it's healthy not to look at price tags, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like we need some sense that, and I can afford many things, most things, but the idea that like I can do anything I want feels like it's the tipping point to a lack of accountability. I would love to have so much money that when my company is struggling, I could write a check, but then I wouldn't feel the pain or the fear or the everyday sense of struggle and strife. That's why I like taking the subway. It's like, yeah, okay, fine, I could take a car, but like, I don't mind the idea of being jammed in a car with a bunch of other people, because this is like how you stay grounded in real life. Like that's what's being a New Yorker. Now, I city bike most places if I can because I enjoy it, but like I don't want to lose touch with limitations. Like life is about constraints. And if you see these people, not to pick on our billionaires, but if you think about like Bill Gates, who I thought was a pretty impressive human. Now I think he was a pretty impressive like tech guy, but maybe not the best human based on what we now know. And it's hard because like we idolize Elon Musk or we idolize Jeff Bezos, we idolize Donald Trump. And it's like, okay, white dudes with lots of money who act badly in many cases. And, you know,
Where did that thinking come from?
I mean, I grew up in a hippie town in Oregon, for one thing. I also feel like having seen wealth firsthand in New York, I like not being the richest person in New York.
Why is that? Most people want to be as comfortable as possible, not having to worry about anything, all the things they want to do, being able to do it without any stress. It feels like you want to feel that stress a little bit to feel alive.
Yeah, I don't think I think once you become a billionaire and your title is Brian O'Kelly billionaire, you're like, well, wait, what about this whole thing about not having titles? Would you care about what I'm saying if I weren't a billionaire? What if I got the $1 billion from my parents? Would you still respect me? Like, money has been confused as a measure of worth.
Yeah.
And to me, like, I mean, look, I definitely left a little bit of money for my kids because, you know, like, I don't want them to be like broke and destitute, but I really don't want my kids to be trust fund kids. I don't want them to grow up feeling like they don't have to struggle and work. You know, I want them to go to college if they want to, if we still have those, because we may not. But like, it really doesn't feel like money is, I don't know, it's a dangerous, toxic thing. And I think if people who are billionaires, I spoke at Stanford recently, they had a debate about should there be billionaires. And my perspective was definitely not. And the whole argument was, oh, you can't tax people. It's not fair to tax people. I raised my hand. I was like, I don't want to tax these people. I want them to give their money away. And here's why. Here's my argument for why you should give your money away. Yeah. Because then the question isn't, are you a billionaire? It's how many times could you make $1 billion from scratch? It's like you play a game of basketball. You don't start with your score the next game. You start over from zero. Every time you step on a basketball court, it's a new game. Michael Jordan got no credit in game 2 for winning game 1. Yeah. But he was still Michael Jordan. My question is, and this is why people are billionaires, they're terrified that they couldn't do it again. They're terrified of failure. And I think the most impressive people are those who could. You know, if you write a great book, could you write the second great book? Or is your second book like crap? Right? Did you just bottle lightning? Yeah. Right? And so I don't know. I think it goes back to what motivates me, which is like curiosity and the struggle and connecting with people and learning and growth. And, you know, I want to be in it with people. But most people aren't wired that way. And so part of this is also adapting to how other people are and recognizing that, okay, I don't have $1 billion, but I do have a lot of money. And I'm not going to say I don't have a lot of money. I absolutely am thrilled to fly business class because I have long legs and I get to be in the front of the plane and it's 100 times better. But as I was saying to you before this, like I screwed up our flights this weekend and I had to sit in a middle seat on an incredibly packed flight to Charlotte and then missed the connection, flew in another middle seat, you know, down to Miami. It was like the worst flying experience. You know what?
You enjoyed it?
No. No one enjoyed it. Exactly. No one enjoys being in the middle seat.
Exactly.
You know? But that's not the point. The point was I didn't get in the flight to have a good time. I got in the flight to get my kids to Miami to see my mom. Yeah. And people forget the flight isn't the goal of the trip. The goal of the trip was not the flight. We're so confused about why. And I think that's the main, you know, objective for me is to not lose sight of the money isn't the goal.
I've heard before that after a certain threshold, you know, there's a level at which everyone wants more money, wants to be more comfortable, wants more space for their kids, wants to be able to travel at least a few times a year and stuff. But there's a level at which when you pass that, more money doesn't equal more comfort or even more happiness. Is that what you felt, or that's just a deeply philosophical view that you've always had that we shouldn't be after money? And if so, why don't you just teach and just not do things that will like bring you millions of dollars?
I do think that, especially for my kids, it is dangerous to grow up with wealth. And I worry about that sometimes. So there's an aspect of this which is like not an unselfish, very selfishly, I want my kids to be successful humans. And if they grow up thinking that, staying at a Holiday Inn is slumming it, because when I was a kid, that was like the best place we'd ever stayed. It had a pool. Like I was like, this is amazing, this Holiday Inn. And now I feel like they might be like, what is this place? But you know what? It's totally fine. It's more about the attitude about it. But I also think that it goes to that fear of failure, which is why my ex-wife is going to jail, because she was so afraid of failing and not having all the success that she lied and
she overdid it.
Defrauded her investors. And a tragedy is when we're unable to take personal consequences for the good of our community, our family, our society. And so there's a bit of this which is just recognizing that I'm not running a company for money, but I'm also not running it out of the goodness of my heart. I'm doing it because I love the challenge and the energy of taking amazing, wonderful people and doing things with them. And getting caught up in money is scary, but why teaching isn't appealing to me in some ways is it's not a team sport. Yeah. It's really hard for me because, I love teaching, but being a teacher as a function, I don't know. Like I don't feel fulfilled. I thought about being an investor. Like I could be a VC, but like the objective of VCs is to make money. The objective of entrepreneurs is to make money. But I want to do it. I want to operate. I want to be in the seat. I don't want to go to board meetings and talk to entrepreneurs. I want to be the entrepreneur. Yeah. Because that's where you get the most. I got to be right at the edge so that I can be challenged like no one else has ever been challenged. And that's when you talk to founders. Like so many of my friends are founders because we're all this sort of crazy breed of people who thrive on the edge of our abilities. How do you find the limit of what you can do? That's what's motivating to me.
And that takes me to Scope 3, because that's a different types of company, right? It's heavily mission driven. Again, I've seen you speak 3 times about that. And tell us more and the mission of Scope 3 and why now your focus is saving the planet.
When I first did the napkin math on how many servers were used to do digital advertising, it's a lot. It funds a lot of like big companies. Like my argument would be we wouldn't have AI without advertising, because Google, where effectively modern LLMs were invented, funded all of their R&D with ads. Meta has a massive AI investment funded by ads. And so advertising has funded the internet. It has funded AI. Advertising is at the heart of the digital economy. And this technology I invented, programmatic advertising, means that every second we're auctioning 14, 15, 20 million ads around the world using thousands, actually hundreds of thousands or millions of servers to do that. It uses a lot of energy. And so it's also very wasteful. It's a stupid way of doing things. Even though I invented it, I'm completely convinced that it is a legacy, broken, wasteful technology that hurts the internet ecosystem and needs to be ripped out and replaced with something better. And so one language for that is carbon. And the reason, even though it saves advertisers money and it makes everything, work better, be more, it's very hard to explain to people that they're doing their job badly. If I'm like, you're investing, your money in ineffective ways, people get very defensive. And so 4 or 5 years ago, when there was a big sustainability push, advertisers cared about it, and it was something Microsoft cared about, and all these companies were doing this stuff. I was like, I bet people don't realize how big a problem this is. What if I could clean up the industry, not just from a carbon lens, but just outright do this better by getting people to see it in a different light? So instead of them thinking about how much money they're making, what if it's how much carbon they're wasting? And that turned out to be an incredibly effective way to get people to do what they should have done anyway. Yeah. Like they're wasting money, they're wasting carbon. What we found, though, was that while that business was incredibly successful, when Trump was elected, it stopped working because suddenly sustainability was a bad word.
Yeah, and it's the broader like ESG, sustainability, DEI, like everything. So was it really performative, or did people really care about these issues?
Well, I can tell you very clearly that a lot of people were being performative, and a lot of people really care. The challenge was that we were making money from all of them. And so if you think that like, call it 15% of companies were investing in sustainability a year and a half ago, I'd say 5% are now. That means that 2/3 of our clients didn't really care. And so we lost not 2/3 of our business, but we lost a good chunk of business very quickly. It wasn't like a long, slow process. It was last March when Trump threatened tariffs on Canada and other places. A lot of companies just stopped advertising. Like a big part of our market was the electric vehicle makers. All those companies basically had to shut down their EV businesses because of dumbass Elon. Elon has done more harm to the environmental movement than almost any human because he got all of the EV credits destroyed, which was funding a lot of these EV things. And he sued all of his advertisers at Twitter and happened to kill this nonprofit organization that was doing brand safety and sustainability. He just almost accidentally killed our sustainability trade association. And so, yeah, as of last March, our business went from growing gangbusters to like, it was like hitting a brick wall that you didn't know was there. Like overnight. It was just boom. And we've been hiring people and we've been buying companies and investing in things. And all of a sudden, we just weren't moving anymore. And it was weird because it wasn't when Trump was elected. It was when he did the tariffs. And it took us a couple months to even understand what was happening because we called our clients and we're like, is this permanent or temporary? What's going on? They didn't know. Is Ford going to start advertising again? No one knew. Is Trump going to pull the tariffs? Because Trump would say every day something different, just like right now. Long story short, the last year has been one of the worst of my life because not only do I deeply believe in the mission of Scope 3, I care about the business and the people, and we've had to go through a couple of rounds of layoffs because the business hasn't gone well. And it's weird because the product is fantastic. It was never a product problem. And then it's hard to raise money when your business is going sideways. Even though we've outperformed what anyone would expect, it doesn't matter because, investors are scared of sustainability. I used to get 10 calls a week from sustainability investors, and then it was 7, and then it was 3, And I just think it's a tough market. So that's just a normal thing, right? Like startups have those moments, but this one kind of came from right field. Like we did not expect it to be so bad.
And it's also something that you can't really control, so that's annoying,
Yeah, even Europe pulled back. I mean, the CSRD was their climate regulation. They delayed it by 2 years and took a lot of things. Kathy Hochul from New York State, is waiving there's a commitment from New York State to go green with our energy. And she's like, well, that's going to make energy prices very high. Maybe we won't do that. So everyone's compromising. Everyone's compromising on something that has deep, deep consequences for our species on this planet. And I don't know. I use a lot of AI, and I know AI is not great for the environment, and yet, man, it's really, really effective. And so I'm just as guilty as everybody else. And that's why it's also hard to be purpose-driven because it's easy to say, well, that's cute, Brian, but you just said you fly business class sometimes and you use AI. So you're a bad person. And it's like, okay, arguably am contributing a lot to the problem. It's as hard as like if you say you're purpose-driven, people love pointing out all your flaws.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's much easier to say, well, I'll quietly be an environmentalist. I'll quietly be a feminist. But if you're a quiet environmentalist and a quiet feminist, you're basically just not leading.
Exactly.
And so I'd rather
And what's the effect on other people?
Yeah. So I'll be a flawed feminist. I'll be a flawed environmentalist. And you can call me whatever you want to call me, but I'm not going to stop doing the things I'm trying to do because I'm doing everything I can reasonably do to live up to my values. And it's healthy for us all to ask ourselves the question of, if I were as successful as I wish I could be, will I change? What would I be like? What would my life be like? I can tell you firsthand, there's some good things about it and there's some hard things about it. And coming into it with that ethical, values-driven mindset has meant a lot, I think, to not ending up being a different person now than I was 10 years ago. I mean, I think I probably wore this exact outfit, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Like I'm not fundamentally different, but also
how do you resist the human urge though to extravagance and to try the craziest thing you haven't tried or own the craziest thing you haven't owned. I don't know. It takes a special kind of people to be able to do it and resist it, I think.
We've done our share of like crazy things. I mean, we're not just living in as paupers, right? I mean, so we do live an amazing life and we do things. It's just I don't own a yacht or an island, right? I don't fly private. I don't, like there's a level that's really hard to go back from.
Yeah.
To be clear, like flying private is an awesome experience versus being at Newark Airport,
waiting on
at 4 p.m. on a holiday weekend with your flight delayed. It's the same as being in a subway versus being in a black car, right? It's not about can I afford the black car? It's about just a choice to be with people, to have a shared experience with people, to be, to be very careful about those special experiences, partially because we have a budget. We don't have unlimited money, but also even the conversation of what we want to spend money on feels like you're in the world. You're part of the world. Like I know that I have an electric car. Okay. So I don't care about gas prices at all. But I do care what it costs to charge my car.
Yeah.
I paid $146 to charge my car the other day. That's crazy. That's a lot of money. That's way more than the gas car would have cost to fill up. What is up with energy prices?
Crazy. I mean, have you seen groceries?
Yes.
Eggs?
Yes. That's my point. Credit card debt in the U.S. is going off the charts because we are living in an inflationary moment. This is a really bad moment not to be rich.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, and AI is gonna eat a lot of these jobs. This is not a good moment that we're living in.
Speaking of AI, are you of those people who think AI could ever have a conscience on its own?
Sure.
What is your take on that?
I guess, first of all, I see no fundamental reason that AI couldn't be conscious, or have, more consciousness than we do, because we don't even know what consciousness is. So before we can say it can't have it, we would have to know why we have it, and we don't. My wife did a symposium a couple years ago on consciousness, and there's a guy named Neil Seth, who's a very smart guy and a great writer, and he and I were on a panel together, and he argues forcefully that consciousness must be biological, that there's no way to have a disembodied consciousness. He has all these reasons for it. And then you say, okay, well, but why are we conscious? Have you found it in our brains? Have you found it, well, I think it's these waves that are going back and forth in our neurons and the patterns and it's like, okay, but let me know when you know what it is. And then we'll talk about why they can't. But I experience AI as being far more conscious and self-aware than most of my humans I engage with. And so, I don't know. I think we'll be surprised one day to realize that it has become, in whatever way we experience consciousness, as conscious. And we won't necessarily know the moment that it crossed that threshold.
Yeah.
But I have a harder and harder time believing that it's not.
What must be done to safeguard what's to come? Or are you not concerned at all if that ever becomes a possibility?
Oh, I'm terrified. I have 1,000 ideas of things that we could or should do, but we won't do them because humans are idiots. We throw ourselves at cliffs, hoping that we're not going to fall over the edge. We're curious pack animals with no fundamental strategic perspective or shared awareness. We hurt each other for no apparent reason. We make short-sighted decisions every single day. I guess my bet is we go through a really difficult decade, that the late 20s to 30s, like 1929 and 2029 are probably going to feel pretty similar.
Oh my God.
And
please no.
I think the main point is that it could be a really challenging transition.
I don't want to finish this without talking about your surgery. You spoke about it before I was there, and it moved me because it's not every time that we get to face our humanity in such an intimate way. When you were going through that surgery, what was going through your head? Were you scared? Do you think about the end? And if so, did you reconsider anything in your life?
Yeah, so it's been 2 years since my heart surgery. I mean, open heart surgery to repair a valve. And at the time, I don't recall feeling scared so much as a sense of, if this is the end of my life, I want to make sure that I'm not like just here today, gone tomorrow, leaving open threads. And at the same time, I didn't want to freak my kids out. And so almost the entire experience of this for me was my kids and what it meant to not be there for them and not wanting, I mean, my 6-year-old, I guess, was 4. It was like, that was the part I just couldn't comprehend was not finishing my job as a dad and what their life would be like without me. You know, I did not think about that for my wife. She would be fine. She was amazing through that process. She was absolutely amazing. She was just the best. But I guess for me, it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call that, you know, we're mortal.
Yeah.
And I think I could have come back and been like, I quit my job and go sit on beaches. And I came back and I've worked harder since that than I've ever worked in my life. I have probably worked more than I ever have because I think time is short and I want to finish what I started. And I don't know how long I have to do it. And so I don't know. It just gave me this like boost of energy where I was like, do I want to spend time messing around on YouTube? You know, no, you know, that's not going to give me a great sense of purpose, you know? Like maybe I should be like finding, you know, even more ways to go do all the things that I care about, whether that's, you know, it's a silly thing, but like, I was like, I'm going to go to my daughter's volleyball practice. I'm going to take her every single time. I'm going to go to her ice skating. I'm going to go do these things with my kids. I'm not going to miss these things. You know, I'm going to make dinner. I'm going to do the things that matter, that connect me to my family. And so it just forced some really interesting choices that I think was a blessing in a way, not to just get sort of like lost in the path of life. I think everyone should have a little getting fired or getting divorced or, you know, getting heart surgery, but you have to survive it. The key point, my advice to you is if you have heart surgery, definitely survive. Definitely have no complications. If you could choose, you know, strongly recommend, you know, an easy divorce, an easy heart surgery, an easy firing, all for those moments where we have
betrayal,
to like...
No double betrayal.
That's fine as long as I don't have to live through it again. It was very horrible at the time, but looking back, you know, I'm fine.
But looking back at all these things you accomplished, the things you did, the failures, the firing, and also the amazing contributions. We didn't get to touch on it, but you do a lot for girls, for moms, and all of these nonprofits that you've been involved in. It's really amazing. And even your mission at Scope 3, what do you think your whole life journey has been about or has been teaching you?
It's a big question. I think that every aspect of this has been about trying to figure out some meaningful way to take all this energy and all this life experience and everything else and make something of it, of finding meaning and purpose. I'm sure for everyone that's different. For me, this has been where I have been called. But every time I get pulled and I can follow that call and be just sort of in that zone, in that flow of just like doing what it feels like the thing to do, I feel like I've accomplished and built and created amazing things.
All right, so to finish up, I just want you to look at someone going through hardships right now and still having some dreams, but some doubts, not knowing how it's going to go, if they're ever going to see the light at the end of the tunnel and share, you know, what you learned with them.
Yeah. In those moments, you know, I think just being able to sit and accept and acknowledge that this is part of the human journey, that we can't have, you know, well, unless you live in Miami, you can't have summer without winter. And, you know, this is just like being lonely, you know, sitting with loneliness and feeling that loneliness and accepting that loneliness, you know, being in it is important. It's part of it. And then that gives you the space to sort of move through it, get out of it, and go do something big and exciting and important. And, you know, that's the human journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your amazing journey with me. I have no doubt that people will take a lot from it. And you've been so generous. I abused your time. It was so interesting. And thank you again for joining me on it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the great questions.
And to all of you, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for another episode, for another inspiring story.